Angie Dickinson, now 93 years old, has lived a life that most people can only imagine, filled with fame, heartbreak, powerful friendships, and painful betrayals. In her long journey through Hollywood, she worked with legends, loved complicated men, and carried wounds that time never fully healed. Today, she speaks about 5 men she could not forgive, not because she wants revenge, but because she finally feels free to tell the truth. Angie began life far from the bright lights of Hollywood. She was born in the small town of Combs, North Dakota, on September 30, 1931, in a place where winters were harsh, neighbors knew everyone's names, and dreams of movie stardom felt as distant as the moon. As a child, Angie did not receive formal training in acting. She had no connections to the entertainment industry, no family with famous names, no teachers who promised to introduce her to producers. She was simply a bright young girl who loved reading, writing, and imagining bigger worlds beyond her quiet hometown. When she was older, she moved to California, first for school and later because she saw a chance for something more. Hollywood in the 1950s was a place of strict beauty standards and fierce competition. Thousands of hopeful young women stood in casting lines every day. Many had training, dance backgrounds, or family in the business. Angie had none of that, yet she had something rare, a quiet confidence, sharp intelligence, and a natural screen presence that made directors look twice. Within a decade of arriving, she had appeared in more than 50 television dramas and films. She climbed from small, forgettable roles to powerful leading characters. Her work in films like Rio Bravo and Dressed to Kill showed her range, but it was the TV series Policewoman that made her a household name. She became the first woman to play a tough, capable police officer in a major American show. She didn't just act strong, she became a symbol of strength for women watching across the country. But behind the fame and applause were struggles she rarely spoke about. Hollywood was a difficult place for women then, even more than now. Angie reportedly lost several roles because she refused producers who wanted her to cooperate in ways she found unacceptable. The media praised her beauty and confidence, but behind closed doors, she dealt with pressure, inappropriate comments, and a constant fear of losing work if she spoke up. Her romantic life was also far more painful than the glamorous stories printed in newspapers. Her relationship with Frank Sinatra, a man millions adored, was intense but also deeply complicated. At first, Sinatra showered her with attention. He sent flowers, arranged private dinners, and made her feel like the center of his world. But Angie later explained that his charm had another side, one marked by jealousy and control. He disliked seeing her in romantic scenes, questioned her friendships, and reportedly reacted strongly when she accepted roles he didn't agree with. She felt torn between the career she had worked so hard for and the love she thought she wanted. Over time, the pressure became too much. One story says Sinatra called a director late at night and urged him not to cast Angie in a film. Whether every detail of that story is perfectly accurate no longer matters to her. What matters is how she felt, silenced, restricted, and lost inside a relationship that began with passion and ended with heartbreak. Angie later said that she loved Sinatra deeply but never felt fully like herself around him. Her marriage to Burt Bacharach brought a different kind of difficulty. Burt was a musical genius, celebrated worldwide for his talent, but life at home with him was far from simple. They married in 1965, and at first, the world saw them as a golden couple, the famous actress and the brilliant composer. But behind the luxury, Angie felt lonely. Burt traveled constantly for work, often leaving her alone for long periods. When their daughter Nikki was born, life changed again. Nikki was diagnosed with autism at a time when the condition was not well understood. Angie did everything she could to care for her daughter, but she often had to carry the emotional and physical weight alone. Burt, overwhelmed by the situation, was frequently away, and Angie felt abandoned in moments when she needed support the most. Although she spoke with grace about their marriage in public, those close to her say she lived with deep pain and disappointment for many years. Nikki's struggles shaped Angie's life more than any movie role or award. She spent years caring for her daughter, fighting to understand her needs, and trying to shield her from a world that did not yet know how to support people with autism. When Nikki died at the age of 40, Angie's heart broke in a way she never fully recovered from. She did not appear before cameras or give emotional interviews. She simply wrote a few quiet but powerful words: "I survived, but a part of me died with her." With time, Angie grew more reflective. Her fame no longer mattered. Awards and headlines felt small compared to her personal experiences. Now, at 93, she does not fear losing roles or upsetting powerful men. She feels no pressure to stay silent. Instead, she finally speaks openly about the 5 men she could not forgive. These men shaped her life in ways she did not choose, through love that turned controlling, promises that turned to lies, or responsibilities they walked away from. She shares these stories not to create drama but to show that behind her glamorous life were moments of struggle that shaped her into the strong, sharp, independent woman she became. The first man on her list is Frank Sinatra, the lover who made her feel adored and trapped at the same time. The second is Burt Bacharach, the husband whose distance and absence left her carrying the heaviest burdens alone. And there are more: men who betrayed her trust, men who used their power carelessly, men who left marks on her life that she still feels decades later. Angie Dickinson is not telling these stories to destroy reputations. She speaks them because they are her truth, and at 93, she finally feels she has earned the right to say what she once could not. Her life was filled with beauty and success, but also pain that stretched across years. Her story, now told in her own voice, helps people understand that even the brightest stars carry shadows. And Angie, after decades of silence, has chosen to step out of hers. As Angie Dickinson continued to reflect on her life, the pain she carried from her relationship with Frank Sinatra was only the beginning. While Sinatra left emotional scars, the second man on her list created a deeper and more permanent wound, one that shaped her entire experience as a mother. This man was her husband, Burt Bacharach. To the world, their relationship looked picture perfect. Fans saw photographs of the glamorous couple attending events in elegant clothes, smiling under bright lights, and surrounded by praise. Reporters described them as a match made in heaven. But behind this shining image was a painful truth that Angie held inside for many years. Their marriage began with excitement and possibilities. Angie admired Burt's talent, and he admired her strength and beauty. Yet, from the start, there were small signs that their relationship would be more difficult than it appeared. Burt was deeply dedicated to his music. He once said that making music was the only time he felt truly alive. While that passion made him successful, it also meant that Angie was often left alone while he traveled the world, performed in concerts, and worked late nights in studios. Angie, despite her career, valued connection, time together, and emotional support, things Burt struggled to give. Just 2 years into their marriage, Angie found herself spending more nights alone than with her husband. Their life changed forever when their daughter, Nikki, was born. The moment Angie first held Nikki in her arms, she felt a fierce and unconditional love. But she also sensed something difficult ahead. Nikki's early behaviors were different from most babies. She rarely made eye contact, often seemed overwhelmed by sounds or lights, and showed signs that doctors struggled to interpret. Eventually, she was diagnosed with autism, a condition almost unknown in the 1960s. There were no support groups, no specialized schools, no clear treatments. Angie had to learn everything by herself, often through trial and error. While Angie faced this challenge head-on, Burt reacted differently. He became distant and unsure of how to cope. He avoided conversations about Nikki and focused even more on his music. Angie remembered how every time she tried to talk about their daughter's needs, Burt grew tense and uncomfortable. She felt abandoned not only as a wife, but as a mother trying to hold her world together. Angie later revealed that she begged Burt for help during some of the most difficult moments. Sometimes she simply needed emotional support, sometimes she needed him to sign papers for special treatments or programs. But Burt often dismissed her requests, claiming he was busy or too stressed. In interviews, Angie spoke softly yet clearly about these moments. She never attacked him harshly, but she described the loneliness she felt when she realized she was raising a child with special needs almost entirely on her own. One painful memory she shared was the night she woke to laughter coming from another room in their home. She thought it was Burt working with musicians or relaxing with friends. But instead, she discovered that Bert had invited a woman he was allegedly having an affair with into their house, while Angie and newborn Nikki were upstairs. That moment, Angie said, shattered something inside her. It wasn't just betrayal as a wife. It was the feeling of being pushed aside while she was giving everything to care for their fragile daughter. Despite these painful events, Angie stayed in the marriage for years, not because she forgave him but because she wanted stability for Nikki. She believed that her daughter needed both parents, even if one of them was emotionally distant. But over time, the strain became too much. Bert's constant travel, his lack of involvement, and his emotional unavailability eventually led to their divorce in 1981. When the divorce became public, magazines called it amicable. Newspapers described them as separating on friendly terms. But Angie later said this was far from the truth. She didn't hate Bert, she loathed the way he had chosen comfort over responsibility, passion over family, and ambition over compassion. Angie carried this pain silently for decades, especially after Nikki's struggles grew more intense. As Nikki grew older, her condition made everyday life extremely challenging. She felt overwhelmed easily and had trouble forming connections with others. Angie tried everything: therapy, educational programs, medical consultations, but resources were limited. Angie rarely talked about how exhausted she felt during those years. She had a successful career, yet she always put Nikki first. Meanwhile, Bert continued focusing on music, rarely taking part in the emotional work needed to support their daughter. The hardest moment of Angie's life came when Nikki tragically died at the age of 40. Angie was devastated. She wrote only a few words publicly, but they were powerful. "I survived, but a part of me died with her." Those who knew her said they had never seen her so broken. Her daughter had been her heart, her purpose, her greatest love. Losing her left a wound that time could not heal. Angie later said that Bert reached out after Nikki's death, but by then, the years of distance and emotional neglect made it difficult for her to accept his words. She felt that if he had been more present, more caring, and more willing to understand Nikki's needs earlier, their daughter's life might have been easier. Angie didn't blame him for Nikki's struggles, but she did hold him responsible for not being there when the family needed him most. Even today, when she speaks about Bert, she does so with calm but unmistakable pain. Her voice doesn't shake with anger, it carries the weight of disappointment, the kind that comes from someone you trusted deeply but who failed you in the moments that mattered most. Angie loved Bert once, deeply even. But what he did, or didn't do, changed her forever. She learned to rely only on herself. She learned that love, even when it shines bright at the beginning, can fade into something cold and lonely. And she learned that sometimes forgiveness never comes, not because of hatred, but because the hurt runs too deep. Yet Angie's story is more than pain. She found strength in motherhood, even during difficult times. She found resilience in her career, even when Hollywood judged her harshly. She found clarity as she grew older, realizing that it was not her responsibility to hide the truth for the sake of men who had harmed her. Today, she tells her story with courage, not to seek sympathy but to help others understand that even icons, even legends, even stars have scars. And Angie's scars were shaped by 5 men whose actions stayed with her for decades. As Angie moved through the later years of her career, she became more selective with the people she allowed into her life. She had learned too many painful lessons from men who had used her, judged her, controlled her, or tried to silence her. With age came wisdom, but also a kind of quiet strength that made her reflect on each of these painful memories. When she looked back, she realized that every man who hurt her did so because they believed she was weak, or easily replaceable, or unable to stand on her own. But Angie had always been stronger than anyone understood. She worked hard, she acted with dignity, she survived heartbreak, she supported her daughter through unimaginable struggles, and she carried herself through a world where men often held the power to shape a woman's future. Yet Angie kept fighting. She kept showing up. And even in her darkest days, she refused to become bitter or hateful. Instead, she held on to the truth of her story, waiting for the day she could finally speak it without fear. That time, she felt, had now arrived. When people asked Angie why she chose to finally reveal the 5 men she could never forgive, she said something simple: because I am old enough not to care what happens next. She no longer feared headlines, criticism, or Hollywood backlash. She had lived long enough to see every rise and fall, every trend, every star fade, every rumor calm down. And now, at 93, she felt free. Free to tell the truth about her pain. Free to talk about betrayal. Free to defend the younger version of herself who never had a voice. Each man on her list represented a moment in her life when she felt powerless. But speaking their names now made her feel powerful. It was not about revenge. It was not about anger. It was about honesty, and finally allowing herself to say out loud what she had carried in silence for decades. Angie believed that silence protected the wrong people. And at her age, she no longer wished to protect anyone who had hurt her. The most surprising part of her story was that Angie did not consider herself a victim. She did not want pity. She did not want people to feel sorry for her. She simply wanted her truth to be understood. For years, the public saw her as the glamorous actress, the beautiful blonde with charm, elegance, and a classic Hollywood smile. But behind that image was a woman who climbed through some of the worst parts of the entertainment business. The pressure to be perfect. The expectation to remain silent. The fear of being replaced. The pain of being judged by powerful men with more influence than compassion. Angie survived things most actresses never talked about publicly. Now, with time running shorter, she decided she would not leave this world with those secrets still locked away.